Hello, Mr. Montalvo, U.S. History, and today we're taking a look at Unit 4, Lesson 1, Day 3, taking a look at the annexation and acquisition of territory by the United States. And our objective is to compare and evaluate the ways in which Florida, Texas, and territories from the Mexican Cession were acquired by the United States, the various methods used to add territory. Two important terms to understand for today's content. One is a dictator, and a dictator is a ruler with absolute power and authority. And annexing. Annexing means to incorporate, particularly a territory, into the domain of a city, a country, or a state. Now, Americans who moved west believed that they were better than the Native Americans and Native Mexicans who lived there originally. For these Americans, racism justified the taking over of lands belonging to the indigenous peoples, only considered to them to be inferior or less than. In 1844, James K. Polk was elected president because he favored the expansion of the United States. By 1810, many Americans were in the Spanish colonies and they were eager for their independence. Many Creoles and Native Americans developed an opposition to the Spanish rule. Harsh rules kept the Native Americans in debt with the Spanish government. A man by the name of Miguel Hidalgo led the Mexican people in a revolution where ultimately Hidalgo was captured and executed. And it would not be until 1821 that Mexico won their independence from Spain and established their own territory, or their own country. In Florida, the Seminole Indians resisted their removal. They fought the U.S. Army in what would become known as the Seminole War. The war lasted from 1835 to 1842, and in the end, the Seminoles were defeated and forced to move off of their lands. In 1818, Spain ceded Florida to the United States, or gave Florida to the United States. Andrew Jackson took the territory from the quote-unquote Black Seminoles. And the Black Seminoles were slaves that escaped their plantations, particularly from the areas of Georgia and South Carolina, and lived semi-independent lives without any issue up until that point. One settlement became known as Fort Negro, which had a population of over 1,000 Africans. The fort was demolished by General Andrew Jackson and his troops. Now, since the early 1800s, American farmers had eagerly looked at the vast region called Texas. At the time, Texas was part of Mexico. And in 1821, a man by the name of Stephen Austin was given a land grant by Spain, so he was able to set up a colony, which would become known as Texas. When Mexico won their independence, they allowed Stephen Austin and his settlers to stay because they believed they would help them fight the Native Americans if need be. Now, to encourage settlement, Mexicans gave the American colonists land grants if they agreed to become Mexican citizens, and in addition to that, convert and become Catholics. Soon, over 20,000 Americans moved to Texas. Conflicts soon erupted because most of the settlers were Protestants and they did not speak or have any interest of learning how to speak Spanish, which was the Mexican language. In addition, the Mexicans feared the United States eventually attempting to annex or take over Texas. The Mexican president of the time, Antonio López de Santa Anna, was a dictator. And was determined to rid Texas of Americans once and for all. At the final siege at the Alamo, 183 Texans and almost 15,000 Mexicans died. The 5 Texan survivors included Davy Crockett were executed. Led by Sam Houston, the Texan army engaged and defeated Santa Anna in the fight that lasted just 18 minutes, known as the Battle of San Justicio. The Texans won their battle, and Texas would then declare independence from Mexico, establishing themselves as their own independent republic. As such, they wrote their constitution using the United States Constitution actually as a model. And Texas did not become part of the United States immediately because they differed in their anti-slavery feelings. Texans owned slaves. In the early 1840s, Spain claimed the California territory. The Spanish soldiers and missionaries built the first European settlements in the California territory along the west coast, what is now the United States. In 1769, Father Sierra built the first mission in San Diego. Each mission included a church and the surrounding land, and each mission, for the most part, became self-sufficient, producing enough to suit its own needs. In the 1820s, newly independent Mexico decided to speed up the economy by taking land from the missions and giving it to wealthy ranchers. Native Americans did most of the work on these ranches. Vaqueros, as they would become known, were native and Mexican cowhands that worked on the ranches, or quote unquote what we would know today as cowboys. Some other ranchers cruelly treated the natives, and between 1700 and 1850, the Native American population declined from an estimated 310,000 to less than 100,000 individuals. President James K. Polk was determined to add Texas to the United States, leading the United States into a bloody war with Mexico. President James K. Polk was determined to add Texas to the United States, leading the United States into a bloody war with Mexico. In 1844, Sam Houston signed a treaty of annexation. The Senate refused to ratify it until Houston convinced them that they would be willing to become allies with the British, the enemies at this particular point of the Americans, if they did not do so. Now, fearing another war with Great Britain that the United States could nowhere near afford, they added Texas to the United States. In February of 1847, General and future President Zachary Taylor met the Mexican General Santa Anna in the Battle of Buena Vista. The Americans were successful in winning the war against the Mexicans. And under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, the Mexicans had to cede or hand over all of California and New Mexico to the United States. This would be known as the Mexican Cession, pictured here on the map below. A few years later, in 1853, the United States paid Mexico for a strip of land in what we call today Arizona and New Mexico, known as the Gadsden Purchase, also pictured here in the map below, helping to define the border between Mexico and the United States. Now, attached to today's lesson is a close read on the Texas annexation, or the annexation of Texas, that will be linked. And just to sum up what we discussed, try to, in your own words, explain the ways in which Florida, Texas, and the territories from the Mexican Cession were acquired. They were acquired in various ways. Which ways or methods were used to do so? And that's all for today. Thank you.